Good morning. Today I'm going to talk about the Tinker versus Des Moines School District case that happened back in 1969. And this case is a really big case um, for students and teachers' freedom of speech. And so this case starts back in December of 1965. And during this time, the Vietnam War was really at full speed, and people were being killed. And so a group of students in the Des Moines School District plan to have a protest, plan to have a public protest where they showed support for a truce in the Vietnam War. And what they did is they decided to wear black armbands on their upper arms with a peace symbol throughout the holiday season, just to show support in ending the war. However, the school districts got wind of this, the school board got wind of this, and they came together and created a policy that banned students from wearing armbands, these specific armbands, and if they refused to do so, the students would be suspended. And so on December 16th of 1965, Mary Beth Tinker, Christopher Eckhart, and a group of 3 other students wore their school armbands to school and were sent home because they refused to take them off. The following day, Mary Beth's brother, John, went to school with the same armband on, and he was also suspended. They were all offered to not wear the armband the next day, and they could come back to school. But the students felt that this undermined their protest and opted to stay out of school via suspension until New Year's Day, or technically the day after New Year's, which was their plan, the end of their planned protest anyways. And here is a picture of Mary Beth and John Tinker with their armbands. And as you can see, they're black armbands with a peace symbol. And so the question of this case really is does a ban against the wearing of armbands in public schools as a form of symbolic protest violate the students' freedom of speech protections guaranteed by the First Amendment? And so there were a couple issues that they talked about in this case. First, you have your First Amendment right of freedom of speech. Does this classify? They're not technically speech or speaking, but they're displaying a message by or conveying a speech just by wearing this symbol. Did the students have the full breadth or full protection under the Bill of Rights while they were at school? Meaning, did the school have power over them and control over what they could say and couldn't say while they were in school? And then there were also cases of, was this selective banning, meaning it wasn't equal for all students. The rule wasn't equal for all students. Students were being allowed to even wear armbands with Nazi symbols at the time. They were selectively picking out this one protest and banning it. And so those were, from the students' perspective, their issue with this meaning or the ban. Whereas the school board preemptively banned this because they believed it would not only disrupt the school, but it would be a distraction in the classroom. It would stop the students from being able to learn in their classroom environment. And so after they were banned and suspended, the Tinkers reached out to a lawyer, and they decided that this was worth taking it to court because they believed that it was a violation of their First Amendment rights. And so they took it to the federal district court. And originally, the federal district court ruled in favor of the school district and ruled that they were correct in their suspension and that the Tinkers were wrong. And so they reached out to, the Tinkers reached out to the UCLA, and they took the court to the U.S. Supreme Court. And while at the U.S. Supreme Court, they this justices voted, and they voted 7-2 that the Tinkers were correct and they were protected under the freedom of speech. And so they said that, they had a right to express themselves, and they didn't believe that it was a disruption to class. And so applications, this case has been used time and time again in other cases, both not just in peace from war protesting, but in students' ability to show criticism of political figures. In their ability to show support in, for example, LGBTQ cases, it has been used as a case. Another case that it has been used in is teachers' rights. So teachers also have the First Amendment rights, even though they're in the school board. They also have a right to freedom of speech. And so this has now become a prime case or example that other cases use in ruling either for or against other freedom of speech cases. And so the Tinkers eventually, they won the case at the Court of U.S. Appeals. And although they won the case, there were some stipulations that the justices put in place with this. And so they said that symbolic speech actions that were meant to make a statement without the use of words, so armbands, were protected by the First Amendment. And they said the armbands were speech, and speech is protected under the student First Amendment rights. But they did say that students could express themselves by protesting, but they could not violate the rules like attendance policy. So they couldn't go in and have a protest and burn down the building, or they couldn't go in and have a protest and cause a big riot where people were being hurt. They still had to follow the rules of the school. And the other case that they said was that it had to be equal. So if the school was going to promote a ban, it had to be equal all across the board for all students. And it had to be, in addition, they also said that because it really wasn't disrupting the school district, the school board, they had preemptively taken the steps before students even arrived with the armbands. They didn't allow for due process. And so what they mean by that is that the students are protected not just by their First Amendment rights, but also by the due process clause of the 14th Amendment, which declares that no person may be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of the law. And so that means that the school district, without doing their due process, tried to remove the property of the students. And I'm sure it goes way deeper than that, but they didn't go through the actual steps in order to ensure that these students got a fair chance at demonstrating that this could be a safe protest without disrupting class. So that really is, and those now set up guidelines for the new cases that are tried for students' First Amendment rights. And I found some additional questions when thinking about this case would be, if the Des Moines School District had prohibited or banned other political gear, would this have given them more authority to ban the armband? And would the outcome of the Tinker case have been different? If they would have banned like Nazi symbols and things like that, would the outcome have been different? And I just wanted to finish with one quote that I really liked from one of the justices in this case, and it says, "It can hardly be argued that either students or teachers shed their constitutional rights to the freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate." And this is one of the justices in the case who ruled in favor of the Tinkers, and he went on to say that just because you are in the school building, it doesn't give them totalitarian rule over all students and how they express themselves. And we did say it needs to not disrupt school, but they should have the right to express themselves. Um, and so I leave this case, really thinking about going back to these questions and, you know, did they selectively just pick out these students because they disagreed with it? And I think this goes back to um, perspective as teachers. What lens are we looking at these through before we're disciplining students? And so I think this also gives us pause to think about that. But again, this has been a big case, and it's used in many different other cases that have followed about students having and teachers having a right to freedom of speech. I look forward to your thoughts on this, and we appreciate you watching my video.